Hello. Thank you for choosing to watch another New Life video. I'm Matt with New Life Church, and I'm continuing the study of the different heroes of the faith mentioned in Hebrews, and today we're continuing the story of Joseph. When we last studied it, we ended up at the scene where Joseph is the second in command of Egypt, and his brothers don't know him, but they just dined with him. He hasn't revealed himself to them. You know, he's kind of testing their characters and probably having a little fun, but showing incredible mercy on them after what they did, jumping him and selling him into slavery. But, so he's going to test them one more time. Chapter 44, we begin, that's Joseph. And he commanded the steward of his house, saying, fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack. Also put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and his grain money. So he did according to the word of Joseph that Joseph had spoken. As soon as the morning dawned, the men were sent away, they and their donkeys. When they had gone out of the city and were not yet far off, Joseph said to his steward, get up, follow the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, why have you repaid evil for good? Is not this the one from which my Lord drinks, and with which he indeed practices divination? You have done evil in so doing. One thing that the Bible never says is what that steward is thinking while Joseph is having him do this. I mean, in history, in modern times, there have been quite evil rulers that have all kinds of things done like this. But I tend to believe that Joseph wasn't like that. You know, Joseph was just in his dealings and everything, and so the steward is, what in the world are you doing? You're framing these guys? Nonetheless, he does it. But I just always wonder what he is thinking, you know. But nonetheless, he does, as I said, he does what Joseph said. And verse 6, so he overtook them and spoke to them the same words. And they said to him, why does my Lord say these words? And they said to him, far be it from us that your servants should do such a thing. Look, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan the money which we found in the mouth of our sacks. How then could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? With whomever of your servants it is found, let him die, and we also will be my Lord's slaves. So they're saying, look, the last time we went back and we found the money was somehow in our sacks, and we brought it back along with other money. So if we're doing that, why would we steal now? And then he said something that he would later wish he didn't say. He was so sure that none of them had the silver cup. He said, you find it on any one of us, let that person die. Kill him right there. And the rest of us will be your slaves. Verse 10, and he said, now also let it be according to your words, he with whom it is found shall be my slave, and you shall be blameless. Then each man speedily let down his sack to the ground, and each opened his sack. So he searched. He began with the oldest, and left off with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Could you imagine what they felt at that moment? In those days they had a way of really showing how they felt. So they tore their clothes, and each man loaded his donkey and returned to the city. You know, back then they would just tear their clothes. Sometimes when you're really sad you want to tear something up, that's nothing new. Personally, I try to make sure I'm not tearing anything valuable up. But I've heard of people who will destroy televisions, other things that cost money. So they tear their clothes, and they're just they're not just, oh well, let's go. You know, I think Joseph wanted to see how they'd react to this. If they could get away with the food they needed for their families, and be able to say they had no choice, but they returned to the city. Verse 14, so Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, and he was still there, and they fell before him on the ground. And Joseph said to them, what deed is this you have done? Did you not know that such a man as I can certainly practice divination? I mean, you know, yeah, he seemed to love saying that he could do divination. You know. And Joseph said, or Judah said, what shall we say to my lord? What shall we speak? Or how shall we clear ourselves? You know, he knows. What am I going to say? You know? Yeah. God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Here we are, my lord's slaves, both we and he also with whom the cup was found. You know, he knows there is no way they're going to get out of this. I mean, they believe God himself put the cup there. You know, the last time they saw him, they were talking that God was getting them back for what they did to Joseph. But verse 17, but he said, far be it from me that I should do so. The man in whose hand the cup was found, he shall be my slave. And as for you, go up in peace to your father. Verse 18, then Judah came near to him and said, O my lord, please let your servant speak a word in my lord's hearing, and do not let your anger burn against your servant, for you are even like Pharaoh. My lord asked his servant, saying, have you a father or brother? And we said to my lord, we have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age, who is young. His brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. And we said to my lord, the lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. But you said to your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall see my face no more. So it was, when we went up to your servant my father, and we told him the words of my lord, and our father said, go back and buy us a little food, but we said, we cannot go down. If our youngest brother is with us, then we will go down, for we may not see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant my father said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons, and the one went out from me, and I said, surely he is torn to pieces, and I have not seen him since. But if you take this one also from me, and calamity befalls him, you shall bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. Now therefore, when I come to your servant my father, and the lad is not with us, since his life is bound up in the lad's life, it will happen, when he sees that the lad is not with us, that he will die. So your servants will bring down the gray hair of your servant our father with sorrow to the grave. For your servant became surety for the lad to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father forever. Now therefore, please, let your servant, let me remain instead of the lad as a slave to my lord, and let the lad go up with his brothers. For how shall I go up to my father if the lad is not with me, lest perhaps I see the evil that will come upon my father. So what's happening here? Judah is now volunteering, let me be the slave. Send Benjamin. I'll stay. I'll be the slave. I'll bear the blame. This does not sound like the guy who jumped his brother and sold him into slavery. So Joseph can see that he's not the same person he was some 20 years ago. So chapter 45 begins. Then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him. And he cried out, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stood with him, while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. So all the Egyptians leave the room. Verse 2, and he wept aloud, and the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard it. They obviously didn't go there very far, just went out of the room. Let this thing in. Then verse 3, then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Does my father still live?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. Could you imagine that? They didn't recognize him. He's all made up like an Egyptian ruler. Dressed like an Egyptian ruler, whatever. But I do imagine that for the first time, he spoke with them in their language, because he had been speaking to them through a translator up to this point. So he says in their language, sounding like Joseph. And Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near to me." So they came near. Then he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt." Could you imagine how they feel at this moment?
Oh.
As they're realizing this is...
Oh my goodness.
I just wanted you to know who it was. That had beaten you. But now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. God works out everything for good to those that love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. Not everything that happens to us is good, but God has a way of working it out. He can turn a negative, like his brothers jumping him and selling him in slavery. Turn a negative into a positive, and he can do it all day long. Verse 6. For these 2 years the famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God, and he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father, and say to him, Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me, you and your children, and your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty. For there are still 5 years of famine. And behold, your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my mouth that speaks to you. I'd imagine they're still looking in disbelief. They might be believing more and more, but look, your eyes tell you, it's my mouth. This is me. You can see, this is me. So my mouth that speaks to you. So you shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and of all that you have seen, and you shall hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. And after that, his brothers talked with him. So, what a reunion, huh?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and later on it'll be revealed his brothers still aren't convinced that he's never going to kill them or have revenge. But for now, this is him, and he's not throwing us into the prison, not killing us where we stand. Instead, he's caring about us. He's saying, bring Dad here, all the family, and you're going to be okay. And that there's 5 more years of famine. Verse 16, now the report of it was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brothers have come. So it pleased Pharaoh and his servants well. I would imagine that Joseph did not actually tell Pharaoh the story of how he ended up in Egypt. Because I would imagine that Pharaoh wouldn't have taken too kindly if he knew that his brothers had betrayed him. I don't think he'd have taken too kindly to that. So obviously Joseph didn't tell him that. But Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your animals and depart. Go to the land of Canaan, bring your father and your households and come to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat of the land. Now you are commanded, do this. Take carts out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and your wives. Bring your father and come. Also, do not be concerned about your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. Then the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them carts, according to the command of Pharaoh, and he gave them provisions for the journey. He gave to all of them, to each man, changes of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. So a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And he sent to his father these things: 10 donkeys loaded with the good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and food for his father for the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and they departed, and he said to them, see that you do not become troubled along the way. I mean, he's even caring enough about them to say that. Don't be troubled along the way. Then they went out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to Jacob their father. And they told him, saying, Joseph is still alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob's heart stood still because he did not believe them. But when they told him all the words which Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. Then Israel said, it is enough. Joseph my son is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. So, let's I think we'll stop here so we don't go into too much overtime. But
Okay.
so what do we see here? Joseph showing God's mercy. Joseph showing God's love. You know, when someone cuts us off while we're driving, we're ready to kill them. Half the time we're certainly ready to do them wrong, have revenge. Someone does something, anything to us, we want revenge. I mean, this was a few thousand years before Jesus had turned to the other cheek. But that's what Joseph did. You know, his brothers had done all that to him, he had no reason, besides God's love, to treat his family like that, to treat his brothers like that. Heck, he could have kept the brothers as slaves and then sent some Egyptians to his family to bring Jacob and the rest of them up. We'll find out later he does even more for his brothers. But that's something to think about. This wonderful example that Joseph gives us. He gives an example of how to work unto the Lord even when he's sold as a slave. Being true to the Lord even when things go wrong, even when he's doing good and then gets framed for attempted rape. And now he has the opportunity to get revenge on his brothers for a very real, terrible thing that they did to him. They didn't know they were sending him to become a ruler in Egypt. They were selling him to be a slave. Only because killing him wouldn't have made them any money. But he forgave them. He gave them another chance to prove themselves that they had changed. So that's something to think about as the Christmas time is here and New Year's. Let all the acquaintance be forgotten, never brought to mind. All the things, grievances you might have about against other people. Do you really need to carry that baggage with you? Or can you forgive like Joseph managed to? But that's just something to think about. Because we're supposed to be forgiving, to forgive others as Jesus forgave us. I hope this has been a blessing, and until next time, go with God.